The laboratory was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Taiho sat at his workstation, staring at the small device in his hand. The lens was no bigger than a contact lens, but it represented 5 years of his life. 5 years of rejected grant proposals, skeptical colleagues, and lonely nights in this sterile room. He was a biomedical engineer on Kepler 442, a research station floating in neutral space between human and alien territories. His lens technology was supposed to help blind humans see again, but nobody cared. Gene therapy was cheaper, they said. More practical, they said. His work was just expensive and complicated. Taiho did not like talking to people much. Machines made sense. People did not. But he liked helping people even if he was not good at showing it. The door to his lab slid open. Yoonji walked in with someone behind her. Yoonji was the station's xenobiology expert, and one of the few people Taiho actually talked to regularly. She was patient with him, which he appreciated. "Taiho, I need your help," Yoonji said. She moved aside and Taiho saw the alien girl for the first time. Rila was Velkara, a species Taiho had only read about. She was humanoid but taller, with pale blue skin and delicate features. Her eyes were closed, or rather, her eyelids were fused shut. All Velkara were born this way. They were a blind species, but something was wrong. Even through his awkwardness, Taiho could see she was in pain. Her breathing was quick and shallow. Her hands trembled slightly. She held herself very still, as if any movement hurt. "Her name is Rila," Yoonji explained. "She has a genetic condition. Her other senses are too strong. Every sound is like a scream to her. Every touch burns. She came here because her father hoped human medicine could help." Taiho stood up slowly. He understood pain, even if he did not always understand people. He approached Rila carefully, making sure his footsteps were soft. "Can she understand me?" he asked Yoonji. "I will translate," Yoonji said. She spoke to Rila in a series of soft clicks and whistles. The Velkara language was designed for their sensitive hearing. Rila responded, her voice barely above a whisper. Even speaking seemed to hurt her. "She says the pain never stops," Yoonji translated. "Every moment is suffering. She wants to know if you can help." Taiho looked at the girl. She was young, maybe equivalent to a human teenager. She had come across space to a station full of aliens desperate for relief. "That took courage. I need to examine her," Taiho said. "With your permission." Over the next week, Taiho worked with Yoonji to understand Rila's condition. They ran scans and tests as gently as possible. What they discovered surprised them both. Rila's eyes were not missing. They were there behind those closed lids, underdeveloped but present. Her optic nerves existed. Her visual cortex was dormant but intact. Taiho pulled up the genetic scans on his screen. He stared at them for a long time. Then he showed them to Yoonji. "Look at this," he said, pointing to specific markers. "This is not natural evolution. Someone modified their genetics. Deliberately. Thousands of years ago, someone made the Velkara blind." Yoonji leaned closer to the screen. Her eyes widened. "Are you sure? Positive? See these sequences? They are artificial, engineered. The Velkara were not born blind. They were made blind," they said in silence. This changed everything. The Velkara built their entire culture around their blindness. Their religion, the path of eternal darkness, taught that blindness was a divine gift, that seeing was impossible and unnecessary, that their heightened hearing and touch were sacred blessings. But it was all based on a lie, or at least on incomplete truth. "Your lens technology," Yoonji said slowly. "Could it work on her?" Taiho looked at the scans again. His mind was already working through the problem. "Maybe. I would need to adapt it. The lenses would have to open her eyelids first. Then stimulate the optic nerves. Then regulate the sensory input so her brain could process it without being overwhelmed." "Could the same technology fix her pain?" Yoonji asked. "If it can regulate visual input, could it dampen her other senses?" "Possibly, yes, I think so." Yoonji looked at him seriously. "Taiho, we need to think about this carefully. The Velkara do not know they could see. Their entire religion is built on blindness being their natural state. If we tell them—" "I know," Taiho said. He did know. He might not understand people well, but he understood this. This was not just medicine. This was challenging everything the Velkara believed about themselves. That evening, Rila's father arrived at the station. Minho was a Velkara elder and diplomat. He was tall and dignified despite his obvious worry for his daughter. Through Yoonji, he explained that he had brought Rila here secretly. The religious authorities on his world would never approve of seeking alien medical help. Taeho and Yoonji met with him in a private conference room. Taeho was not good at these conversations, but this was too important to mess up. Elder Minho, Taeho said, speaking slowly so Yoonji could translate properly. I can help your daughter. But there is something you need to know first. He explained everything. The genetic modification, the artificial nature of Velkara blindness, the possibility that his lenses could do more than just ease Rila's pain. They could give her sight. Minho listened in silence. When Taeho finished, the elder sat very still for a long time. You are certain? He finally asked. About the genetic modification? Yes, Taeho said. He showed Minho the data, explaining it in simple terms. Minho studied the screens, though of course he could not see them. He used a tactile interface to feel the data patterns. After a while, he made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. I suspected something like this, he said quietly. In our oldest archives, there are hints, fragments of stories from before the path. But the religious authorities suppressed them. I thought they were just myths. He was quiet again. Then he spoke in Velkara directly to Yoonji, who translated, My daughter suffers every moment. If your technology can end that suffering, I want you to use it. But I need you to tell her everything. Give her the choice. She deserves to know the truth. They brought Rila in. Through Yoonji, Taeho explained what he had discovered. He tried to describe what sight was like. But how do you explain color to someone who has never seen? How do you describe light to someone born in darkness? Rila listened carefully. When he finished, she asked questions. Smart questions that showed she was trying to understand something completely outside her experience. Will it stop the pain? She asked. I believe so, Taeho said. Then I want to try. Rila said simply. I want to live without pain. If this seeing thing comes with it, then I will learn about seeing. Minho reached out and found his daughter's hand. He held it gently. Are you sure? He asked her. Father, you brought me here to be healed. Let the human heal me. Whatever comes after, we will face together. Taeho nodded, though they could not see it. I will begin work immediately. But this will take time. Several weeks, maybe more. I need to make sure the technology is safe for Velkara biology. As Rila and her father left the conference room, Yoonji turned to Taeho. Do you realize what you are about to do? She asked. You are not just helping one person. You are about to prove that an entire species' understanding of themselves is wrong. Taeho looked at his hands. They were steady. He thought about Rila's pain, about a girl who had traveled across space hoping for relief. He thought about all the other Velkara who might be suffering too, believing it was just their fate. I am trying to help someone in pain, he said quietly. That is all I know how to do. The rest, we will deal with when it comes. But as he returned to his laboratory and began designing the modified lenses, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered a warning. Science could reveal truth, but truth once revealed could never be hidden again, and sometimes truth destroyed as much as it illuminated. He pushed the thought away and focused on his work. There was a girl in pain who needed his help. Everything else would have to wait. 3 weeks passed in a blur of sleepless nights and endless calculations. Taeho barely left his laboratory. His colleague Jiho, a neuroscience specialist, practically moved in to help him. Together they worked on adapting the lens technology for Velkara biology. The challenge was enormous. Rila's brain had never processed visual information. If they simply gave her sight all at once, her mind might not be able to handle it. She could suffer permanent damage, or her brain might reject the input entirely, leaving her in worse pain than before. We need to introduce it gradually, Jiho explained one night, pointing at a simulation on the screen. Like teaching a newborn to see, but compressed into days instead of months. The lenses will need to control exactly how much visual data reaches her brain at any given time. Taeho nodded, adjusting the parameters. And at the same time, they need to regulate her other senses, dampen them enough to stop the pain but not so much that she loses her natural abilities. Rila visited the lab every day. She could not help with the technical work, but her presence motivated them. She would sit quietly in the corner, listening to them work. Sometimes she asked questions about what seeing was like. Taeho found himself trying to explain concepts he had never thought about before. What is blue? Rila asked one day. Taeho paused his work. He looked at the blue light on his equipment. How could he explain color to someone who had never seen? Blue is calm, he said finally. Like cool water or a clear sky. It is peaceful, quiet. Does that make sense? Rila tilted her head. So colors have feelings? Sort of. Yes, they make you feel things when you see them. That sounds beautiful, Rila said softly. I hope I can understand it. Finally, after 23 days of constant work, the lenses were ready. They looked like thin films, almost invisible. But they contained incredibly complex technology, tiny processors that would interface directly with Rila's neural pathways, sensors that would monitor her brain activity and adjust in real time. Yunji joined them for the procedure. She would monitor Rila's vital signs and provide immediate translation if anything went wrong. Minho insisted on being present too, though there was nothing he could do except wait and hope. The medical room was quiet. Rila lay on the examination table, her hands clenched at her sides. Even though she tried to hide it, Tejo could tell she was afraid. Are you ready? Tejo asked gently. Yes, Rila said. Her voice was steady despite her fear. Just tell me what will happen. First, the lenses will create small openings in your eyelids. You will feel a slight tingling. Then they will stimulate your optic nerves very gently. At first you might see nothing. Or you might see light, just light without form or meaning. We will go very slowly. If you feel pain or discomfort, tell me immediately and I will stop. Rila nodded. Tejo carefully placed the lenses on her fused eyelids. They adhered instantly, their edges blending seamlessly with her skin. He activated them with a remote control, monitoring the readings on his screen. Beginning now, he said softly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Rila gasped. Her body went rigid. Minho moved forward in alarm, but Yunji held up a hand, watching the vital signs carefully. Rila, talk to me, Tejo said urgently. What are you experiencing? I do not know, Rila said. Her voice was shaking. Something is happening. It is not sound. It is not touch. There is something there. In front of me, what is it? That is light, Tejo said, his own voice tight with emotion. You are seeing light. Not clearly yet, but you are seeing. Rila's breathing became rapid. Too fast. The readings showed her stress levels rising. Tejo immediately reduced the optical input to almost nothing. It is too much, Rila gasped. Too strange. Too different. I have reduced it, Tejo said quickly. You are safe. We will go slower. Much slower. Over the next hour, they worked carefully. Tejo would increase the optical input by tiny amounts. Rila would describe what she experienced. Then they would pause, letting her brain adjust before continuing. It was exhausting for everyone, but especially for Rila. But slowly, remarkably, progress happened. Rila began to distinguish between light and dark. Then she noticed when someone moved in front of a light source. Her brain was learning, adapting, making sense of signals it had never received before. And something else happened too. The pain she had lived with for so long began to fade. The lenses were regulating her hypersensitive hearing and touch, bringing them down to normal levels. For the first time in her life, Rila existed without constant suffering. The pain, she whispered at one point. It is gone, I cannot believe it. It is actually gone, she began to cry. Not from pain, but from relief. Minho, hearing his daughter's tears, moved to her side and took her hand. He was crying too. After that first day, Tejo established a careful training schedule. Each morning, Rila would come to the lab. He would gradually increase the complexity of what the lenses allowed her to see. Shapes, movement, depth. Each new element had to be introduced slowly so her brain could integrate it. By the end of the first week, Rila could identify simple objects. A ball, a cup, a chair. She would reach out and touch them, matching what she saw with what she felt. The joy on her face was beautiful to watch. This is my father, she said one day, looking at Minho. The lenses were showing her a simplified version of faces now, just basic shapes and contrasts. But it was enough. She reached up and touched his face, matching the visual image with the tactile memory she had always had. Minho embraced her, overwhelmed. Through Yunji, he thanked Tejo over and over, but Tejo felt uncomfortable with the gratitude. He had only done what any decent person would do. He had seen someone suffering and tried to help. By the second week, Rila was ready for color. Tejo introduced it very carefully. First just red, then blue, then green. Each color was like a revelation to her. She would stare at colored objects for long minutes, trying to absorb and understand them. Blue really is calm, she said, looking at a blue light. You were right. And red is intense, urgent, like a warning. Yes, Taiho said, smiling despite himself. That is exactly right. Rila's personality changed as the pain left her life. Before, she had been quiet and withdrawn, conserving energy to deal with her suffering. Now she became curious and energetic. She asked endless questions about everything she saw. She wanted to see the stars, so they took her to the observation deck. She stood there for hours, staring at the star field, crying quietly with wonder. I never imagined this existed, she said. All my life I heard about space. But seeing it, seeing the stars, I have no words. Taiho found himself enjoying her company. She made him see his own world differently. Things he took for granted became magical through her eyes. A simple flower. The way light reflected off water. The expression on a person's face. She noticed everything, treasured everything, but not everything was perfect. Late in the second week, a new visitor arrived at the station. Sister Hana was a Velkara religious official, a member of the Seers of Darkness. She had come on a routine diplomatic visit, completely unaware of what was happening in Taiho's laboratory. Minho, learning of her arrival, immediately became anxious. Hana was not just any seer. She had been his friend since childhood. She was devout but also intelligent and compassionate. If anyone might understand what they had done, it would be her. But she would also feel obligated to report to the religious authorities. There was a formal dinner to welcome Hana to the station. Minho and Rila attended. Rila wore a hood to hide her eyes, but Taiho knew it would not be enough. Hana had been trained since childhood to perceive the world through sound, touch, and scent. She would notice something was different. Taiho watched from the back of the room. He was not good at social events and had only come because Yunji insisted. But he was glad he did. He saw the exact moment when Hana realized something was wrong. Rila was speaking to another diplomat. She turned her head to follow the conversation, but she turned it too precisely. She was not relying on sound to locate the speaker. She was looking at them. Watching them, Hana went very still. Her head tilted slightly, the way someone might look if they were seeing something impossible. She made her way across the room to Minho and requested a private conversation. Her tone was polite but firm. Minho had no choice. He agreed. An hour later, Yunji contacted Taiho urgently. Minho wants us to meet with Hana, all of us, tonight. They gathered in the same conference room where this had all begun. Hana sat across from them, her posture stiff. Rila sat beside her father, trembling slightly. She had removed her hood. There was no point in hiding anymore. Hana spoke in Velkara. Her voice was controlled, but Taiho could hear the tension in it. Yunji translated quietly. Minho, what have you done? What has been done to your daughter? Minho began to explain. He told her about Rila's pain, about the human technology, about the truth they had discovered. When he finished, the room was silent for a long time. Finally, Hana spoke again. Show me. Taiho opened his laptop and displayed the genetic data. He explained what it showed. That the Velkara had been deliberately made blind. That their entire religious foundation was built on something artificial. Hana processed the data through a tactile interface. She was quiet for a very long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, smaller, uncertain. If this is true, if we were made blind, then everything I believe, everything I have taught, it is all... She could not finish. Taiho felt a wave of sympathy for her. He knew what the transport ship carrying Rila, Minho, and Hana left Kepler 4A42 3 days later. Taiho watched it depart from the observation deck, a knot of worry in his stomach. Yunji stood beside him. They will be fine, she said, though she did not sound convinced. Hana will present the evidence properly. The High Council is composed of reasonable people. Taiho was not so sure. He had seen how people reacted when their fundamental beliefs were challenged. Reason often had little to do with it. For the first week, there was no news. Taiho tried to focus on his work, but his mind kept drifting. He had given Minho a complete copy of all his research. Everything needed to manufacture the lenses. He wanted the Velkara to have full access to the technology, to make their own choices. On the 8th day, a priority message came through. It was from Minho, marked urgent. Taiho opened it with shaking hands. The message was brief and dire. The High Council had convened to hear the evidence. The response had been explosive. Some council members wanted to investigate further. Others demanded the evidence be suppressed. But the Supreme Seer, a powerful elder named Bora, had declared something far worse. She proclaimed that the human technology was not a gift, but an attack, a weapon designed to destroy Velkara culture. Bora had known fragments of the truth for years, Minho explained. She had deliberately kept it hidden, believing that revealing their engineered blindness would cause more harm than good. Now she framed the entire situation as human interference, cultural imperialism, an attempt to remake the Velkara in humanity's image. Rayla had been declared a heretic. Minho had lost his diplomatic position and was under house arrest. Hana had been expelled from the Seers of Darkness, and an order had been issued for Rayla to be taken into custody for corrupting the sacred form. Taiho read the message 3 times, his heart sinking with each reading. What had he done? He had only wanted to help. Instead, he had torn a family apart and put a young girl in danger. Yunji found him in his lab an hour later, staring at nothing. She read the message on his screen and put a hand on his shoulder. "This is not your fault," she said firmly. "You revealed a truth. What people do with that truth is their choice, not yours." "But I put Rayla in danger," Taiho said. "I should have known this would happen. I should have thought it through better." "She was already in danger," Yunji said. "She was in constant pain. You gave her relief and the chance to make her own choice. That matters." Over the next few weeks, the situation on Velnath deteriorated rapidly. News reached the station in fragments, but the picture they formed was troubling. Velkara society was splitting apart. An underground movement had formed almost immediately. They called themselves the Children of Light. Young Velkara scientists and those who had always questioned the strict religious doctrine flocked to this new group. They wanted access to the lens technology. They wanted the choice that Rayla had been given. Leading them was a scientist named Doyun. He had spent years secretly researching ancient Velkara technology from before the path. He had always suspected their blindness was not natural. Rayla's existence proved he was right. Now he wanted justice for what had been done to his people thousands of years ago. Messages from the Children of Light started arriving at the station. They had acquired copies of Taiho's research and were attempting to manufacture lenses themselves. But they needed help. They needed refinements to the technology. They needed support. Captain Soman, the station commander, called Taiho to her office. She was a practical woman who had commanded the station for 10 years. She looked tired now. "Dr. Taiho, I need you to understand the position we are in. If you provide further assistance to these Children of Light, we are directly interfering in Velkara internal affairs. That could trigger an interstellar incident, possibly even military conflict." Taiho nodded slowly. "But if I refuse, I am abandoning people who are suffering, people who want the same choice I gave Rayla." Soman sighed. "I know, there is no good answer here. I am ordering you not to provide direct assistance, but I cannot stop you from publishing your research more widely. If your data were to become publicly available across the galactic network, well, that would be unfortunate but not illegal." She was telling him what to do without directly ordering it. Taiho understood. He thanked her and left. That night, Taiho uploaded everything, his complete research, detailed manufacturing instructions, safety protocols, everything needed to create the lenses safely. He published it on an open scientific network accessible across known space. He included a simple statement with it. "This technology was developed to help those in pain. I offer it freely to all who wish to use it. Individual autonomy is a universal right. Every sentient being should have the freedom to choose their own path." The text was translated into every major language, including Velkara. The response was immediate and explosive. On Velnath, thousands of Velkara began manufacturing lenses. Entire cities split between those who embraced the technology and those who viewed it as sacrilege. The Path of Eternal Darkness mobilized its enforcers, a group called the Blind Guard. Their mission was to confiscate lenses and prevent their spread. Violence broke out in the capital city. The Blind Guard attempted to raid a facility where the Children of Light were distributing lenses. There were casualties on both sides. It was the first blood spilled in what would become a much larger conflict. Bora, the Supreme Seer, used this violence to make her case stronger. She broadcast a message across all Velkara space. Taiho watched the translation with growing horror. "My people," Bora said, her voice filled with righteous anger. "The humans seek to destroy us. Not with weapons, but with corruption. They offer us sight, but it is poison. For thousands of years, we have lived in peace. We have built a civilization without the vanity and violence that plagued our sighted ancestors. The path of eternal darkness saved us from ourselves. These human devices will undo all that we have achieved. They will turn us into something we are not. They will make us into them. She declared a state of religious emergency. All Velkara who had adopted sight were to surrender their lenses immediately or face consequences. She called for a complete break in diplomatic relations with humanity, and she authorized the blind guard to use whatever force necessary to preserve the sacred order. The children of light responded with their own message. Doyen spoke for them, his voice calm but firm. We are not abandoning our culture. We are expanding it. The path teaches us to seek understanding. How can we understand if we limit ourselves deliberately? Our blindness was not divine will. It was violence inflicted by our ancestors. We refuse to be bound by their choice. We claim the right to choose for ourselves. Minho managed to send another message to Taiho. He, Rila, and Hana had gone into hiding with the Children of Light. They were safe for now, but the situation was deteriorating. Civil war seemed increasingly likely, and Bora was using the crisis to push for military action against human space. There were those in the human government who wanted to respond with force. Ambassador Kyung, a senior diplomat, argued loudly that humanity should support the Children of Light directly. If the Velkara want to start a war over individual freedom, let them. We will show them what human military technology can do, but others counseled patience. This was an internal Velkara conflict. Human intervention would only make things worse. The best course was to wait and hope that reason would prevail. Taiho felt paralyzed. Every day brought news of more violence, more suffering. He had caused this. His desire to help one person had spiraled into something he could never have imagined. Yunji tried to reassure him, but even she seemed uncertain now. Then came the incident that changed everything. A young Velkara named Nari, barely more than a child, had received lenses from the Children of Light. She had embraced sight with joy, sharing her experiences on social networks. But she lived in a city controlled by orthodox religious authorities. The blind guard came for her. They took her to a public square. In front of a crowd, they forcibly removed her lenses. They did it surgically without pain relief as punishment for her heresy. The procedure was brutal and traumatic. Nari was left blind again, but now with psychological scars from having experienced and then lost sight. Video of the incident spread across Velkara space and beyond. The cruelty of it shocked even many Orthodox believers. How could this be compassion? How could this reflect the path of eternal darkness, which taught understanding and kindness? Hana, watching the video from hiding, felt her last ties to the religious establishment break. She recorded a message and released it publicly. As a former seer, her words carried weight. I dedicated my life to the path, Hana said in her message. I believed that our blindness made us special, made us pure, but the path was built on a lie, and worse, it is being used to justify cruelty. The silent observer, if they exist, would not condone torturing a child. The path we are on now is not enlightenment. It is tyranny dressed in religious robes. Her denunciation had enormous impact. Hana had been respected throughout Velkara society. For her to reject Bora's leadership so completely gave others courage to do the same. Protests erupted in dozens of cities. Not just the young and rebellious now, but ordinary citizens who felt that things had gone too far. The civil war on Velnath had been raging for 3 months. The Children of Light controlled several major cities and had established autonomous zones where the newly sighted could live freely. But Bora's forces held the capital and most of the military infrastructure. The conflict had reached a bloody stalemate. Taiho watched the news reports with growing despair. Every day brought stories of violence. Buildings destroyed, families torn apart, both sides committing acts they would have considered unthinkable just months before. And the human Velkara border remained tense, with military forces on both sides waiting for an excuse to engage. Then came the message that changed everything. It was from Doyen, the leader of the Children of Light. He had a proposal. A meeting on neutral ground. Representatives from all factions would come together to attempt a negotiated solution. The alternative was total war, and nobody really wanted that. Not even Bora. The meeting would be held on Kepler 442. Captain Soman agreed to host it. though she warned everyone that expectations should be modest. These people hate each other now. Getting them in the same room without violence will be an achievement. Do not expect miracles. Taiho was surprised to learn he was expected to attend. You started this, Samin told him bluntly. They want you there. Besides, you understand the technology better than anyone. That might be important. The delegates began arriving 3 days later. From the Orthodox faction came Bora herself, the Supreme Seer, along with several senior religious officials. From the Children of Light came Doyun, accompanied by Hana and Minho. Rila also came, though she was nervous about facing Bora. Human representatives included Ambassador Kyung and several military advisors. The first session was tense. They met in a large conference room that Soman had prepared carefully. Seating was arranged to avoid obvious confrontations. Translators stood ready. Security personnel waited outside just in case. Soman opened the meeting with a simple statement. We are here because the alternative is unacceptable. Thousands have already died. Millions more will die if this conflict escalates to full war between our species. We must find another way. That is all I will say. The rest is up to you. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Bora broke the silence. Her voice was cold and controlled. The human says we must find another way. But there was a way. The way of our ancestors. The path of eternal darkness guided us for thousands of years. We had peace. We had purpose. Then humans came with their arrogance and their technology, determined to remake us in their image. They gave us a poison and called it medicine. This crisis exists because humans cannot accept that other species might choose differently than they do. Doyen responded, his voice equally firm. With respect, Supreme Seer, the path was built on a lie. Our blindness is not divine. It is the result of genetic warfare thousands of years ago. One faction decided for all future generations that we would never see. That is not sacred. That is tyranny. Dr. Taiho did not impose anything on us. He offered a choice. Individual Velkara decided for themselves. That is what you cannot accept. Not human arrogance, but Velkara autonomy. The choice was stolen from us, Bora shot back. Yes, our blindness was engineered. I have known this for years. But it saved us. It ended the wars that nearly destroyed our species. The blindness forced us to develop other strengths. Our culture, our philosophy, our peaceful society, all of it emerged from necessity. To undo that now is to risk returning to those dark times. Hana spoke up then. Her voice was respectful but sad. Supreme Seer, you taught me that the path was about understanding and compassion, but what you did to Nari was not compassionate. Torturing a child to make a political point betrays everything the path claims to stand for. If our beliefs cannot survive people choosing differently, then perhaps they are not as strong as we thought. Bora's posture stiffened. Nari was punished for heresy. She corrupted the sacred form. That cannot be tolerated. She was a child, Hana said quietly, a child who wanted to see her mother's face. That is not heresy. That is love. The room fell silent. Even Bora seemed momentarily at a loss for words. Finally, Minho spoke. His voice was tired and sad. Supreme Seer, I brought my daughter to Dr. Taiho because she was dying. Not physically, but spiritually. The pain was destroying her. Every moment was agony. You speak of preserving our culture, but what culture allows its children to suffer when relief is possible? I made a choice as a father. I would make the same choice again. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Rila stood. She was nervous, but her voice was steady. Supreme Seer, I am the one who started this. I chose to receive the lenses. I chose to see. I want to tell you what that has been like. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Before the lenses, I knew only pain. The world was suffering. My other senses were so strong that they hurt me constantly. I could not touch without burning. I could not hear without agony. I lived in a prison of sensation. The lenses freed me from that. They gave me balance, but they also gave me sight. And sight showed me things I never imagined. The beauty of starlight, the patterns in a flower, the expressions on the faces of people I love. These things brought me joy. Deep, pure joy. But here is what I want you to understand. The darkness was not evil. The darkness was all I knew, and there was value in it. I do not hate who I was before. She looked directly at where Bora sat, though of course the Supreme Seer could not see her. Now I have experienced both. I understand what we lose with sight and what we gain. I can move between both states. Sometimes I remove my lenses and experience the world as I once did. It reminds me of truth that sight can obscure. Other times I embrace vision fully. Both have wisdom. Both have value. Rila's voice grew stronger. Our people could be unique, Supreme Seer. Not because we are all blind or all sighted, but because we understand both. We could become bridges between different ways of perceiving reality. Some of us could remain in darkness. Some of us could embrace light. Some of us could move between both. Think of the wisdom we could develop. Think of what we could teach other species, she paused. But that can only happen if we have the freedom to choose. If you force everyone to remain blind, you are no better than the ancestors who forced blindness upon us. You become what you claim to oppose. The room was completely silent. Everyone was processing what Rila had said. It was a vision neither side had articulated before, not victory for one faction over the other, but integration. Diversity within unity. Finally, Taiho spoke. He had been quiet until now, but Rila's words had moved him. He stood awkwardly, uncomfortable with public speaking, but determined to say what needed saying. I need to confess something, he began. When I first helped Rila, I assumed sight was better. I am human. I have always been sighted. I thought I was fixing a disability. I was wrong. He looked around the room. Working with Velkara, learning about your culture, I realized something. You have developed abilities we humans lack. Your hearing, your spatial awareness, your ability to understand the world through sound and touch. These are not lesser than sight. They are different, and in some ways they may be superior. Taiho pulled out a small device. My colleague Jiho and I have been working on something, a reverse version of the lenses. Technology that would allow sighted beings like humans to experience the world the way blind species do. It dampens vision while enhancing other senses. We tested it. The experience was incredible, humbling. He looked toward Bora. Supreme Seer, you speak of the wisdom in darkness. You are right. There is wisdom there that my species has never accessed. We are trapped by our reliance on sight. We miss so much because we only trust what we can see. What if we could learn from you? What if humans could experience the world through Velkara senses? That would be true exchange. Not imperialism, but mutual growth. Ambassador Kyung looked surprised but intrigued. Are you saying you want humans to voluntarily become blind? Not permanently, Taiho said, but yes, for periods of time. To learn, to understand. We could establish exchange programs. Humans learning to perceive like Velkara who choose sight learning about visual culture. Both species growing beyond what we were. For the first time, Bora seemed genuinely thoughtful rather than just defensive. This idea of mutual exchange, it has potential. If humans acknowledge that our traditional ways have value worth learning, that changes the dynamic considerably. Over the next 3 days, the negotiations continued. They were difficult. There were moments when it seemed like the talks would break down completely. But slowly, painfully, a framework began to emerge. Individual choice would be guaranteed. Adult Velkara could decide whether to adopt sight or remain blind. This was non-negotiable for the children of light. Cultural preservation would be respected. Certain sacred spaces and traditional institutions would remain exclusively for those maintaining blindness. This was essential for Bora and the Orthodox faction. Education would be reformed. All young Velkara would learn about both their engineered history and the wisdom developed from it. They would be taught both blind and sighted skills before making an informed choice at adulthood. An interspecies institute would be established. Humans and Velkara would work together to understand different modes of perception. Humans could learn traditional Velkara sensory techniques.